Simpson's Hit and Run, a game we all know and love and one that is in desperate need of a remake. In this series, I'm going to teach you how to recreate the core mechanics of that game in Unity using completely free assets. This series is aimed at more intermediate Unity learners. I won't be going over how to download and use every piece of the software, nor will I be explaining the basics of programming. Maybe sometime in the future I'll create a series more aimed at beginners. In the series, you'll learn such things as how to create a third-person controller, how to create a camera, how to handle AI, and how to create a vehicle controller. Of course, all these things can be applied to different types of games, not just games like Hit and Run. You may be wondering why I chose to make a series on how to recreate Simpson Hit and Run and not on how to recreate Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is a game series that strives for a certain level of realism, which makes the code that goes into things like a character controller much more complicated. Simpson's Hit and Run is focused more on an arcadey feel, which leads to simpler code for us. In this episode 0, I'll show you how to set up the scene and import the assets we need to be ready for episode 1, which is creating the character controller. Okay, so we're starting with a blank Unity project with the URP template. The version is 2022.3.16F1. First thing we'll do is delete the README. We don't need it. And then we'll move this into our settings folder. We'll also delete the tutorial info folder. Delete. Now what we can do is create a folder. We'll call this art. And inside here, we'll create another folder. Call this animation. And let's just use it singular, animation. We'll have another folder for controllers, and then we'll have a folder for animations. Perfect. So the main assets we'll be using is this Cinti Polygon starter pack. It's free. You can just add to my assets. Another one we're going to use is this Gridbox prototype materials. It's also free. Add to my assets. And then if we come in here and we go Windows, Package Manager, My Assets, we'll find our Gridbox prototype materials. I already have them downloaded, so I'll import them, but for you may have to download them. And then the same for the starter. So this is it. You may have to download. I just need the import. Import. Perfect. So if you watched my last video on how to set up the input system, you'll know how to do it. But if you don't have the time, I will leave a link to this Google Drive folder where you can download the package. Download that, and before we install it, we need to go to Package Manager, Unity Registry, and we need to change to the new input system. Install. Let it restart. Okay, now that's installed, we can bring this package we downloaded into our folder, import, now I've created an object here already called input handler. We'll just attach the input handler script, and that is input setup. Let's also collect our animations, and of course everything we use in this will be free. So we're using Mixamo. If you're not familiar with this, this is a site run by Adobe where they provide free animations and free character models that you can use in your game. So we're going to need an idle animation. Just type in idle. And I think for this type of game, maybe this generic idle would be good. Download. What I like to do is change it to FBX for Unity. Now, I like to download it with skin. You can download it without skin and it won't download with the model. But I found issues before that when you don't download it with the skin, the one of the feet can be broken. So just download it with the skin and we can delete the model after. Download. We're also going to need a walk animation. Let's pick a decent one here. Again, for the type of game we're making, we don't want something too exaggerated. Something like that seems good. Download. FBX for Unity with skin. Download. And then the last animation we need is a jog animation. Now you can use a sprint animation or a run, but I think jog is a better speed. So I think something like this, jog forward. I think that looks good. Again, same settings, download. Okay. Let's go back to our project. Wherever you downloaded those animations, just select them. Make sure we're in our animations folder. Select all your downloaded animations and then just drag them in. And you can even preview your animations like this. So here's the idle. Jog forward. And walk. Okay, so for this to work with our character, we're going to need to change some settings. So we'll select them all at once. Go to Rig, change from generic to humanoid, hit apply. And then we can get rid of all this extra data. We really just want this. So I'm just going to click on the actual animation, hit Control D to duplicate it. Now we have the animation on its own. We can delete this. Let's rename this to idle. And for an idle, we want it to loop. We want the rotation to be original. So he's pointing directly forward. We can break that into pose. Y position. For now, we can leave it like this. Maybe we can change the feet. It seems like his feet are slightly sinking into the ground, so maybe just leave it as original. We can break that into pose. And same for X and Y, back to pose. Same for these other animations. We can just Control D to duplicate, delete the larger file. F2 to rename this, just to get that one away. Same thing, it's going to be a looping animation. Body orientation should be original. Back into pose, back into pose, back into pose. And lastly, same thing again. Delete, loop, back to pose, original, back to pose, back into pose. Perfect. One of the last things we're going to do is we're just going to simply set up our floor. So we're going to go create 3D object, plane. Let's leave it as called plane. Make sure the coordinates are 0, 0, 0. In our art folder, let's create a new folder. Call this materials. Enter, create. Then we want to create a material. Let's call this white grid. And then we will find for our base map the white texture. This is from the grid texture pack we imported. And we'll just change the smoothness to 0 to make that a pure white. And we'll apply this. Now this is actually too big. So what we want to do is in tiling, let's change this to 10 by 10. Let's just add a cube for reference. Because a cube will be the 1 unit, and we want one of these squares to be the same size as that. So that looks about right. We want a larger area though for our player. We're going to do a lot of testing in this scene. So let's scale this by 25. Y will be still 1 and 25. And of course we need to change this now. So let's change our tiling from 1 to 25, 25. And this is the wrong tiling. Let's change that back to 1. And it's this one. So probably 250 if I'm right. And there we go. Just delete this cube. And now we're ready for our first lesson. We have the models we're going to use. If we go to prefabs in this folder, we have characters. Okay, so you can see that these models are this magenta color. That's because this asset pack was made with the standard render pipeline, but we're using the universal render pipeline. So an easy way to fix this, so we go to materials, let's select all of them, go edit, rendering, materials, convert selected built-in materials to URP, proceed. You see these updates. We can do the same for these ones. Edit, rendering materials. And what you're essentially doing is just updating this old code to the new code. If we go back to these characters now, still magenta here, these may update later, but if we click on them, we can see that they're now visible. So this is what we'll be using. We have our animations now in our art folder. Idle, jog forward, and walk. We have our script folder with our input. So we're ready to go.